Hi, this is Zach from CanExcel, and welcome to another episode of Trainer Spotlight, where we connect with top professionals in the football industry to uncover tips, tactics, and tricks to help you build a thriving soccer business that supports the next generation of players. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Saul Isaksson-Hurst to the show. Saul is a renowned technical development specialist and private trainer, known for his innovative approach to ball mastery, 1v1 dominance, and player-led development. With decades of experience in the game, Saul has coached in some of the Premier League's most prestigious academies, including Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham. And he now works privately with elite players while running My Personal Football Coach, a global coaching education platform. So join us as Saul gives us his insights in developing high-level players, building a private training brand, and scaling coaching systems through content and digital tools. Let's dive in and learn how to take our training and business to the next level. Saul, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Lovely intro there. Liked it.
Yeah, you got a decent sized intro. We've been in the game for a while, so had to give it the respect it's due. Before we dive in, my family's full of Gunners. My brother actually has a tattoo and everything, and wow. I've got my red Arsenal Sambas behind me. I heard you mention before that Dennis Bergkamp was one of your favorite players and a big influence in your football life. What was it about him that stood out?
I think got to put it in context as well. Like, I grew up and I spent a lot of time going to Arsenal games. So I was an Arsenal fan, but some of my friends are Tottenham fans, some of my friends are Arsenal. I used to go to a lot of games, mostly Arsenal games. And at that time, it was very dour. Very long ball. It wasn't very exciting. There's some good players in there, but then Bergkamp came and was a real change. And the first time I'd ever seen that player up close, just he's so skillful and technical, moves so well. And actually, when I was younger, I actually followed Ajax as well. So from afar, Ajax was a real big one of my passions. It was probably one of my main teams, even though it was abroad. And I just loved the players they produced of like Bergkamp and Rijkaard and, Edgar Davids and Clive, like so many. And Littman and all. Anyway, so he came and it was just such a breath of fresh air. I'd never seen anything like him in English football, just the way he moved, his technique. And it was also some of my my limited playing career sort of player I sort of emulated, because obviously I wasn't really that physical. I couldn't really run. So, I'd had to try and, use my technique. So just was real inspiration to me and, a breath of fresh air, and obviously going to the games, saw him live a lot and was just incredible really. So, it was really fantastic to see.
That's amazing. Yeah. My dad was the one that kind of passed that along to us, the Arsenal bug, and specifically Bergkamp having a bit of Dutch background. My dad also was a big fan of Ajax, and we even had Dutch VHS tapes, like Dutch training videos as kids that we did in the basement. So very cool. That just reminded me of that. So thanks for sharing. Let's get into your coaching. So you've coached in some of the biggest academies in England and then went out to build something of your own. And I'd love if you could take us back. What made you decide to go all in on private development?
Well, I sort of started my coaching career in America. Went there and sort of really learned my trade. And then while I was there, I was doing privates, if you like, so you call them, or individuals training as well. And then came back to London. And I thought, what am I going to do here? I really want to continue my coaching. I was planning to do my teacher training, so I started a company and I was doing camps, like some camps, but then also focusing on individual stuff. And then I sort of realized quickly that I enjoyed doing individual stuff. I made quite a reputation early for getting players, training players and getting them signed into academies. So I sort of got my head around the system, which I sort of made sense to me. And I preferred the model anyway. I quite like going and working individual to player, getting to know them, building relationships. I found when you're doing camps, it can be a bit up and down, lots of overheads. People might not turn up, it might rain or might snow. And then you got a pitch there, you still got to pay for. So I quite like in terms of like one player doesn't turn up, they don't pay for the pitch anyway. But I liked the dynamic of working individually and getting into players really and seeing how they can improve and sort of seeing how quickly, you can make those real gains. So I just sort of quite quickly sort of decided to really hone in on that, focus on that. And it sort of suited my coaching methodology anyway, which I was a skills coach, technical coach. So I got a job at Tottenham quite quickly when I came back. And like I said before, they had a Dutch style, ball mastery 1-1 philosophy that they just started to incorporate. So that's why I moved up the ranks very quickly there, because they were looking for someone like me, fortunate, right place, right time. But I mean, basically it's the same principles, when you're doing individual coaching, when I'm doing team coaching, I'm looking to develop the individual's technique, their bravery, their quality on the ball, all built around the 1v1. So it was just a perfect symmetry really, and just sort of made sense to me.
Nice. Were there any major challenges that happened when you were starting up, making that shift?
I think, anyone, when you're starting a business, the main challenges are, getting people out there. At the time, you've got to remember, this is like over 20 years ago. It's different now where you go to like a, every man and his dog is a one-to-one private trainer. Obviously that's, I joke often, but not a lot of people did it, and a lot of people understood it wasn't even there. So the main challenge was getting awareness on it, like any product, any marketing tool, getting people aware that you do it. And then obviously I had to build a brand from scratch. That's what I was really conscious of, and I was very ambitious, very energetic when I was younger, trying to do camp. I remember like when I was first starting out, trying to do camps abroad when I was working at Tottenham, and, say to people like, for example, in Thailand and Asia, they said, want to come out and do camps. I said, well, no, you can't use the Tottenham badge because obviously I'm not allowed. And they said, well, look, no one's interested unless we use the badge because no one knows you. And I thought, right, that's really pivotal to me because I want to be able to travel on my own name, on my own brand. So, I'm really conscious of the fact I had to build myself from scratch. And ironically, one of the clubs actually did use the brand without me knowing. And I nearly got sacked from Tottenham for it because they advertised it in Thailand and someone grasped me up. But anyway, the point was I knew that, right, I want to be my own man. I want to build my own brand. I want to be able to travel the world and understand, have my own methodology out there, basically.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I want to pull on one thread that you mentioned about every man and their dog are a private trainer nowadays. And that's sort of something that I've been seeing in Toronto, biggest city in Canada. There's lots of people going out there and, offering these services, and the quality of product just isn't there. So that's one thing that I'm really hoping and dedicated to. For people who actually are in this industry and want to become top trainers, that they get educated in the right way. So I'm with you there on kind of banging my head against the wall, seeing some people with the quality of sessions that...
I suppose that's the challenge, isn't it? Because you talk about coaches getting educated. I mean, there's no official educational pathway for individual coaches like ourselves. So if you go to any, say in England or America, you're going to go to the conventional coaching qualifications are really good, but they're all team based, all about game based. There's no encouragement to doing things in isolation or working individual players. So it's a bit of an unknown quantity for players. So, people just, have to do it off their own back. I mean, I'm sort of fortunate, creating my methodology over 20 years, it's proven in the Premier League and that sort of thing. So it's taken me, you got to do that. So it's really important to be able to draw from those experiences, but it's difficult for young coaches because they go out and, and they just, they see people on Instagram. People might have big following on Instagram, but they've got this is the thing, got no experience working at a high level, maybe even got no experience of any educational courses to draw from. So they've just got a big following. So you've got lots of Instagram coaches who maybe not necessarily doing things which are developmentally efficient, from my own, if I'm talking from my own perspective. So it can be difficult out there.
Absolutely agree. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper. But as independent trainers, we sometimes get pushback. Parents and even coaches saying things like, one-on-one training isn't game realistic. And personally, I think it absolutely can be, especially when you're intentional, breaking things down into football actions, 1v1 duels, and position-specific scenarios. So that's a big part of how we structure sessions at Can Excel. And I'm curious, when you hear these types of narrow views from critics, how do you usually respond?
Well, I mean, listen, often they might have a point. If you look at a lot of sessions and you see kids jumping in ladders and out of hoops and doing things, it doesn't occur. So my thing is obviously it's really important. In fact, it's vital that, the players should be able to see the game in your session. So for me, my methodology is built around breaking the game down into microcosmic examples, those game actions, like you said, all around the 1v1 duel. And then you practice those until you can't get them wrong. And even the ball mastery I do, the ball manipulation, ball mastery is all drawn from the 1v1 duel, very specific. The only thing in my session that might not look like a game is a skill combination work, but that's movement work to make the players more efficient in those 1v1 duel actions. So still related, and even my combination work still directional in terms of very safe side moves, for example, going forward, and always ideally with some sort of end product. So yeah, it's really important to draw from the game, have context in your work, particularly when you're working unopposed without any opposition. And that's what players will say to me. They say, I love your sessions because I see the game, whether it's in movement to receive and create a bit of space to pass forward or shoot or cross. That's what that's what's really important. So with the younger players, we might work more globally in terms of general all over movements. And with the older players, we work much more possession specific. And then obviously it's much more explicit. You say, right, that's where you see the game. You see the game in the pitch. So, I'm lucky I work with Premier League players from all the top 5 leagues in Europe. When a player comes to me, it's okay, what position do they play? What profile are they? Right, I'm going to break down the game changing moments of that position for that player. Then I'm going to create a session to do that, and then I see the transfer in the games. I watch Match of the Day, Premier League or Champions League, and I see my players doing things in the sessions that we worked on. And that's what you should be doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a nice payoff when you actually see them doing it in a game. And even myself, when I've drilled the same specific scenario or situation over and over again, then being able to play in a game and it comes more naturally, I absolutely agree that the supplemental training has a place. Of course, team training and a full game environment, to me, that's going to be the absolute best place to develop as a player because you're in the actual game environment.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you guys, in North America, you call it supplemental training. We don't call it here in England, but that's true what it is. It's supposed to be a supplement. So that's a problem. We live in a binary world, everyone's on X and social media saying I'm in this camp or in that camp. In reality, I say to everybody, people associate me that Mr. Unopposed work. I'm not. I mean, obviously, when I'm working individually with the player, most of that is unopposed because the nature of working individually with a player. When I'm working in my team sessions, most of that will be opposed with opposition in game scenarios, but then I still work unopposed to that as well, maybe a smaller part, but it's still really key. So it's about having balance, and coaches will know there's no elite environment in the world where you're not going to have both unopposed work and opposed work. Experienced coaches know that. So don't believe in these people, say don't work on that. And ironically, most of these people haven't worked in elite environments. It's just about knowing when and where to utilize that. And, like I say, I work with top players in Champions League who can still drop out of that team environment and understand and break down the technique a bit more and work on really refine those quality details.
Yeah. And you've spoken about player-led development. So training that's not only coach-directed, but centered around what the player actually needs in the moment. Can you walk us through what that looks like in a session, and how can a trainer help a player take ownership of their growth while still guiding them towards high-level outcomes?
Yeah, I think I remember every player is different. Every player has a different journey, and you might have two players who play in the same position but completely different profiles. So so you have to be flexible and understand that and say, right, what does this player need? What does this player need to be successful? What does this player need to get into the team on the weekend, or get a new contract, or get scouted, or get in an academy, or just help improve and kick the ball probably more confident? So you really got to break it down. Look, and so for example, you might structure a session and say, right, here we're going to work within these areas, and then suddenly you see something and say, right, or the player will say, I need to actually work on this. So there's there's a big misconception where they'll say, come to a session where it's coach led, meaning I'm telling you, you have to work on this, you have to work on that. Always, particularly the more experienced players, it's a two-way thing. And most of the time they're saying, look, I've had this problem in the weekend, or we see it in a game. So it's a collaboration. So you have to understand, you always got to listen to the players and in terms of what they need. Obviously, I'm going to add stuff to that and challenge them. But you look in that, you've got to be prepared you can't be too rigid in what you're planning and what you're delivering, because you might have to change the session completely. You might have an idea of say, right, let's work on this, and then you see something, in the session, or the player says something, or within what they're doing, you might have to change it. So it's about, and John Allpress, who's a really one of the best coach educators, who works at the English FA, said that, he said, really, the best coach will go to a session and you almost just improvise as you go along. You have some structure, but then you let the players lead you down to where they need to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes, especially if drilling something specific that you think maybe it's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes for them to understand, and then they're just not getting it and you need to extend the time.
Yeah.
I like the idea of being flexible and not being too rigid. I sometimes can lean on the structured side, and I have, the session plan. I have my phases of the things that I want to check off their development list, but I appreciate that you got to roll with it and see how they're doing. Does that also take into account, what their energy level is like that day?
100%. And also you have to have some structure, because you can't go in there and say, right, it's just chaos. Obviously that's the problem, is right. As an educator, a coach, you need to have some structure, but then obviously the boundaries are porous, aren't they? You move that, things move around. Like say, for example, the fatigue level, so players loading, say, okay, I'm a bit more tired this week, or for example, if you're working with pro players, and it's within the season, you're not more conscious of that, so your recoveries are a lot longer, your sets are a bit shorter, so you have to understand that. Or maybe I'm a bit more tired today. So a player came to my session yesterday, actually, a young guy, under 17. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, still want to train, so we just basically wound it back a bit and just worked on shooting technique rather than explosive movement stuff as well, and actually that increased and got better. So again, you have to respond to what the players are telling you. If they say, I'm not really up to it this week, it's like like us. Sometimes you go to the gym, feel I'm not really 100% today, I'm not really feeling like, I can max it out.
Yeah, I agree. It was about 2 weeks ago where I had a young player who just came back from being sick, and I had to make that coaching decision to cut the session about halfway through because he just wasn't ready to be back in training. He was just not there physically. He couldn't recover even when we were doing light fitness. So yeah, the flexibility even goes to that farther state of you got to protect the player too, make sure that you're helping them not just as a player, but as a human person, and making sure that their body is in the right state and you're not, overloading them or burning them.
Absolutely.
All right, a couple of shorter side questions here. What tools do you use for client management systems or for booking and payment?
For myself, I don't use anything because I have relatively small portfolio. So I just use my own. But when I used to, when pre-COVID, I had PDA football, we had about 15 coaches working for me. And then I used something called 10 to 8. Software, which is like an automatic booking system. Calendly, we've used as well. But for me, I don't need it. Because it's just me now, my stuff, and then I have to focus on the online stuff. I don't need a CRM from what I do. Obviously, use something different for my app. Obviously, that's a bit different, but I use a few things, something called MailChimp for my email marketing, and I use something called MemberMouse as my member software, sort of management software. So
thanks for that. When it comes to elite players, I'd love to know what's possible. So what are your top end rates if you're okay sharing? And how do you structure that? Is it by one-off sessions or by a package deal?
So I have like my basic flat rate is £250 an hour. I don't do any package deals. So I used to do package deals when I was younger. I used to do get 10, get one free or something. I don't need to. The thing is, I say to everyone, look, come to a session. If you like it, carry on. If you don't like it, don't carry on. I mean, lucky because I'm oversubscribed and I've been doing it for 20 years. So I'm confident in what I do. And I don't have to feel like the obligation. You got to do it. If you're not happy with doing it, don't carry on. I say to everybody. So we just work from one session to the next basically. And that sort of works for me. So, but when I was younger, I started off, I used to do that packs of 5 or 10. You do a discount, you can do that. But for me, it's just like, it's almost got like if someone's happy doing it, you're not happy with the session, don't carry on. And there's someone else waiting to come in and take their place straight away. So it doesn't really bother me.
Exactly. When you build up your brand and reputation and you've got that kind of client, not a revolving door per se, but you've got clients willing to come in, you can be a little bit more strict with your pricing.
And also you get to, it's nice because I can be more selective in who I take, who I coach and don't coach and that sort of thing. So I'm, fortunate position to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's switch it up to the online portion of your biz. So you've built a serious content machine, YouTube, podcast, digital platform, the app. What does it really take behind the scenes to get traction?
Well, it's never ending carousel of doing content for social, but also for the app. So the app's been going for about 10 years. I mean, still talking with developers now, doing new stuff to do new courses and stuff like that. The main drain of my time is the social media, the content around that, because there's so many, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn now. LinkedIn's massively for coaches now. It's a real good channel to exploit. Still got X, and you've got YouTube channels, and you've got shorts on YouTube and stuff like that. So it's like a never ending drain on your times. And the problem is the more content you put out, the more money you make. Content's king. That's the reality. So, so it's just a challenge of trying to carry on doing that and keep it fresh. And the podcast I started doing, not sure how long, but it's had like over 1 million downloads. Do you know what I mean? There's people listening. So it's really powerful in terms of getting my brand out there, because I'm my personal football coach. Do stuff for players, we do stuff for parents, we do stuff for coaches, do stuff for B2B stuff for clubs. And a lot of the B2B stuff came through coaches, came through the app podcast. A lot of the coaches listen to that. The coaches access my online courses at mypersonalfootballcoach.com because they listen to my podcast. It's so powerful. The reach is unbelievable.
Nice. That's awesome. And you have a lot of online products too. So what's the most successful one that you found in terms of sales? And why do you think that is?
Well, like I say, it's different because for the player and the coaches, the player and the parents, we have the basic dynamic ball marshal programs are really successful. The original ones, so there's 5 to 7, 8 to 11, 12 to 16, 17 plus. They're the basic programs are really successful. The 24-day technical transformations are the progression to that. They've all the classic programs really do well. Then there's like position specific programs, striker, midfield, wide player. They always do quite well. For the coaches ones, the online coaching courses really do well because they focus on ball mastery, 1v1, small-sided games. There's nothing really out there for coaches if you want to look at that to really understand more about that. So they all those courses really, and I'm actually working on I'm about to release a new course, which is actually, you could be the first person to hear this. It's actually for one-to-one trainers. It's a one-to-one trainers course basically. So that's released next month. So specifically for individual coaches to learn about methodology and stuff like that. So that's the next one I'm really excited about releasing.
That's very exciting. The exclusive here.
Yeah, you got exclusive.
Nice. So you're clearly still on the pitch, but you run this global coaching platform. What's one thing that you stopped doing that actually helped you grow?
I think I still need to spend more time on the online stuff. So I need to give, but I still really enjoy being on the pitch. I was just thinking earlier, I had a session this morning, 2 pro players. I just loved it so much though. So great, but I should, working on with my app and my online business, that's a full-time job in itself. So I really should be doing more time on that, but it's difficult to let go of the stuff on the grass because that's so fulfilling. But it's not sure really. I mean, it's difficult. You got to learn to delegate, I suppose, understand, find good people to grow and stuff like that. So that's a real challenge and can be, real difficult.
Yeah. Thank you for the honest answer. So private training used to be a side hustle, and now people are building full-time businesses, even careers. If you had to start again, 0 clients, 0 followers, what would your first 3 moves be? And I think the first one might be something like join the 1v1 trainer course, but I'll let you answer.
Well, there you go. Yeah, well, that's good. You've answered my question there. But I think it's difficult. Like I say now, I work with a lot of coaches doing mentoring. Get that question a lot. The most difficult thing now is that it's a completely different market. When I started, there was people do a bit here, there, but I was probably the first person to really focus in on it and specialize in it as a career, as an individual specialist. Now, like I said, everyone's a one-to-one trainer. So it's a crowded market. It's a saturated market, but still, people are out there getting new clients. I think it's different now, knows about it. More people know about it. So the market's growing, keeps growing. So I'd say to everybody, you have to try and figure out, right, what's your USP? So what's going to, distinguish you in this crowded market, like any business, you know what I mean? So you got a lot of people doing it. So what makes you different to the Joe Blogs next door who's also doing it? So try and think what your USP is. Obviously, I say it's the same thing. Like, you do the one-to-one trainers course, but just see one-to-one experienced coaches, good people coaching, understand what good coaches do, you know what I mean? And the main things are still going to be, be professional, word of mouth's the best sort of marketing you're ever going to get. I say to everyone, turn up early, make sure your equipment's on point, your boots are clean, you look good, you're respectful, you're a good communicator. And then it's about delivery. And the same, whether you're doing individual coaching or team coaching, delivery is key. So it's about energy, passion, tempo of your session. I mean, I did a session, I do consultancy at academies around the world. I was at Brighton doing a session the other day, and the manager mentioned about, the intensity of my session was so good. And I said, that's the key. We're working with young players, whether you're working individually or group, they should be in an experience to have an opportunity to be bored. So it's about, real getting into them and having that explosiveness in terms of delivery and what they're doing as well. So, it's a tough market to navigate now, but, you just got to try and find your own path in it.
Nice. Good answer. Absolutely agree that, the actual coaching, your charisma as a coach, like the system that you're using or the structure, as well as game speed that you're running your drills through. And that's really useful for young kids, bringing them up to speed and actually pushing them into the environment of what they'll be in a game situation.
Yeah, I remember the real inspiring coach educators I had, Tim Bradbury, when I worked in America, said, especially when you're working with youngest, you need to have a personality. If you don't have one, make one up or go and pretend to steal one, so because it's about, they say, charisma, passion, energy, you got to be an entertainer. You got to try and captivate the audience, and you got to grab them and you hold them in your hand and then, whatever. So it's a really important part of it.
For sure. And you mentioned that, when you started to now, things have really changed. Where do you see the industry going?
I think probably obviously, I was talking about I'm doing a course, but maybe, the federations to do a course. Do you know what I mean? Have to get recognized in official things so then we can support coaches and to try and coach in a right way, having some sort of methodology which is linked to something. So I think it'd be there, and I think there'll be much more. I think, most academies will have individual coaches, most first teams will have individual coaches, and they'll be seen as a real important part of the development, I think.
All right. I like that. Here in Canada, I built something called CanExcel. It's a private training system built around a 4-stage player development model. We focus on 5 key pillars, including ball mastery and football actions, but also mental resilience and tactical awareness. I'm always coaches how other coaches view systems like this. Do you think something like this helps trainers scale their impact, or are there other areas that you'd push further on?
Well, and everyone needs a structure to how they work. So I think it's really important, and all the things you talked about, ball mastery, game actions, tactical, the mindset, they're all really important parts, might look different to people, but, like I say, people maybe associate individual coaching with only doing technical work. And that's a big misconception. There's a lot of physical outcomes, working mentally with players all the time, psychologically, getting into them. And, my big part of my work when I go travel around the world talking to academies is 1v1 tactics, particularly, you know what I mean? So it's really important to understand there's so much scope when you're working with players individually.
For sure. All right, we've reached the end of the episode, and I like to ask everyone that I bring on here the same question. We have a poll on it on Instagram and everything. And the question is team training enough to develop as a player?
It depends how much you want to develop. And I think everyone's different as well. So like I say, you don't need to do individual training. I mean, it's going to help you. I mean, some players, you have to do more though. I mean, if you're really serious about developing, like I say to players in academy football, if you're only doing what you're doing in academy, then you're not really got a chance. It's the most competitive market in the world. So you need to do more. You need to do extras. That might be you yourself in the garden. That might be using someone like me or yourself, or doing online with my personal football coach, whatever. Like, for example, I was using the same, I used to make the same argument all the time. You've got a young violinist in London who's one of the best aspiring violinists in the world. They're going to be doing a lot of hours, a lot of work. Or you've got someone who's just picked up, like my daughter's doing the violin at home. Extra help's going to help. A little bit of individualized focus is going to help any player or any person on their journey, whatever they're doing. It's just got to decide what suits you, and so it's not one size fit all, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. I think the academies in the UK are a little bit farther along than they are in Canada, so I could see the need for it, especially in Canada. But it does depend on things like the environment. You're absolutely right, and how far that player wants to take it. If they're really serious about it, then I think adding that supplemental training, whether you're doing it alone or with, a professional that can help you bring you there a little bit faster. But yeah, thank you for answering that question. That's all we have. So I'm happy to share your work, your Instagram and all of that. But is there anything else that you would like to say for the audience so that they can check you out?
No, yeah, just obviously follow me on Instagram, myfootballcoach1. I mean, you'll probably give me my links, but if you're interested in my new one-to-one trainers course for one-to-one trainers, just follow me on Instagram or X or mypersonalfootballcoach.com. And then, like I said, the big release date is coming soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You're an inspiration to me and other trainers as well. So thank you for this.
My pleasure. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.